ComanchePreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, our daily look at an area football team and the key questions we'll be answering about that team in our August 20th preseason preview here at Big Country Preps. I'm with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom, and tonight, Dan, we're talking about the Comanche Indians.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, one of the big things we do with these daily podcasts is talk about the questions these teams face. And Comanche's a team that's going to face a whole lot of questions this year. They've got just 13 of their 30 lettermen back from last year's squad, which went 7-4. Among those, three offensive and three defensive starters. So there's going to be a lot of new faces in those starting lineups this year for Comanche. Obviously, with that being the case, there's going to be, like I said, a lot of questions. We'll talk about some of the biggest ones here in just a few minutes, but this is going to be a big year and an interesting year, I think, for Coach Escobar and his squad.
All right. And before we start talking about Comanche, we want to remind you folks to please hit the subscribe button on YouTube. It's free. And then please hit the little bell so you'll get notifications each and every time that we come up with a new video there. And with that, Dan, let's jump into the Comanche Indians. It's an interesting topic and a ton of questions. We'll see how
Yeah.
many of them get answered in a positive way.
Yeah, definitely a lot of questions. And one thing you and I talk about a lot, we've been doing this a long time. We've seen a lot of football teams. We've seen trends and those sorts of things. Enough of that to learn that these are types of years that every program faces at one time or another. Even, I mean, we've seen Wiley, a large 5A program, or a 5A program rather, face some situations in years like this as well, where at some point, your talent is either just not deep enough or maybe a little bit lean to compete at the level you have traditionally competed at. And to me, the big question for this year for Comanche is can they avoid that type of season? I think one thing that Coach Escobar has done a really good job of is building a culture and winning expectations there at Comanche in his time. I think this year we're just going to learn just kind of how strong is that foundation that he's built through those first several years. Because I think he's done a tremendous job of raising the bar there, or at least continuing to build on a bar that some of the past coaches there have started. But this is those types of year where you got three returning starters on both sides of the football, a lot of new faces in a really tough district. You're going to be leaning a lot on that culture, a lot on that tradition to try to continue what you've seen in recent years. So I'm just wondering if they can do that. This is the type of year that just personnel wise could be a rebuilding year for Comanche. I'm interested to see if they can put together the type of season and be a surprise team.
There's no shame in having a rebuilding season if that's what happens at Comanche. We're not saying that necessarily that is, but there's no shame in it. Um, the big question on my mind for Comanche this year is how they're going to perform up front. These are going to be rebuilt, largely rebuilt offensive and defensive lines. And if they can bring the physicality and not make mistakes that young offensive lines tend to do, uh, they could still, put together an impressive season and get into the playoffs. That's possible. But man, what a hit, from graduation. They lost at least, they lost five key players, four of whom are going to be playing in the collegiate ranks. That's a big hit, you know. Lots of Letterman gone. I think the offensive and defensive fronts are going to be a very big key. If they get good play up there, and they're not that big, they're not all that big. They're very inexperienced also. But if they play over their heads and get good performances there, then you know they can have an impressive season. I will say this also: if somehow or another Escobar manages to pull off one of these 7 or 8 win seasons and get a playoff spot and all that, maybe even a high playoff seed, and this guy has coached really well. I mean, he's done a fabulous job at Comanche. Let's just be honest, he has. If he pulls this off this year with the hit that they're taking on graduation, that this will be his best coaching job to date because they
Yeah.
have taken a big hit. So we'll see. They have the 6-4 JV team, which is respectable, coming up to try to fill the gaps, but it's not overwhelming by any chance. At least it's a young team, so we shall see.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that with Coach Escobar. I was driving through Comanche the other day, really over the weekend, and thinking to myself, just what a remarkable job Coach Hermsmeyer did, and now Coach Escobar has done
Yeah.
to raise this program's expectations to the level that he has. Because there was a time when you and I first arrived in Abilene where Comanche was kind of an easy out, and they've gotten to the point where that's definitely not the case. So it's going to be interesting to see this year if they can continue that build. Which leads me to the last question. You mentioned some of those guys they've lost. To graduation, key players. One of those is quarterback Caden Davis, a guy who was a huge part of their offense last year. Their leading rusher, with the 1,200 yards on the ground, an efficient passer. They didn't throw a ton, but he was efficient when they did. He's a guy that's going to be hard to replace. That quarterback position is obviously so important. You mentioned the lines, and that's definitely going to be a big spot because of just the physicality that Coach Escobar likes his teams to play with. But you also need a trigger man, and that's the part that's going to be interesting. They've got Cooper Welch Jr., who looks like he's going to be the likely one to slide in there, and that's a name that folks around Comanche just the Welch name's one that that we've been talking about a lot. But that's going to be a big spot. It's going to be interested to see what kind of quarterback play they get this year because I think that'll be a big key to whatever success they have as well.
I agree. Yeah, we were talking about that. You and I have been doing this a long time. I was sitting with my wife and just counting up the years that since I've been in Texas, starting off in '01. This is my 25th season covering Texas high school football already,
Yeah.
which is stunning to me. I mean, I started here, I was younger than you.
Mhm.
Um, and this is year 25 already. I'm an old timer.
Yeah, and
I'm an old timer.
I think I'm coming up on year 19. I think so. It's
Wow.
we've been around a long a long time. So it's
Wow.
been a fun ride for sure.
All right. We're going to take a look at Comanche's schedule for 2025. Before we do that, we're going to thank some of our sponsors. Beginning with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of K-Lakes 93.5 FM out of Brackenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Bracken, KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a new vehicle or a used vehicle, call Rob. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. Give him a shout at 254 559 2266. That's Rob Durham up at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. And finally, Cavalry Resources and Construction, located up in Breckenridge, serving the entire big country, offering custom standing seam roofing made on location and all commercial roofing applications. Give Kobe Walker a shout at 254 246 5546. That is Cavalry Resources and Construction in Breckenridge. All right, and with that, we're going to take a look at the Comanche schedule for 2025. We'll begin with the non-district portion first. They'll open on the 29th of August against Caddo Mills. That's going to be on a neutral site at Royce City. On the 5th of September, they'll visit Llano. And then on the 12th, the 12th and 19th, respectively, it'll be Eastland and Toller at home. And then a road date at Early on the 26th of September to close out the schedule for non-district.
And then they'll have their open date on October 3rd before jumping into district with a road date at Jim Ned, followed by another road date October 17th at Sweetwater. They'll then come back to host Breckenridge on the 24th of October, go to San Angelo TLCA on the 31st of October, and then close out their regular season schedule at home against Clyde on November 7th. So you mentioned the non-district portion being tough. It's not a whole lot easier in district play either. So this is going to be
No.
a real challenge for Comanche this year.
And there are teams other than Jim Ned and Sweetwater, like Breckenridge and Clyde, that expect to field better products this year. So it's by no means easy. Game or games of the year. We always take a look at that for every team. The way I see it, it's a three-game stretch, Dan, and I think you'll agree with it.
Yeah, I agree. Those final three games, the home game against Breckenridge, the road date at TLCA, and then the home game at Clyde. I will say if I'm just picking a single game of the year, it's that home game against Breckenridge on the 24th. If you win that one, you got to feel good about your chances about going on the road and beating TLCA. Then you're playing Clyde for the 3 seed as opposed to get into the playoffs. If you lose that Breckenridge game, that Clyde game there at the regular season finale basically becomes a must win if you hope to make the postseason. So to me, it's that Breckenridge game on the 24th that really jumps out to me. Can kind of be a make or break game for the Indians.
I look at the Clyde game as a last chance if They do not come out of the Breckenridge and TLCA stretch with a sweep. If they split those two games for whatever reason, the Clyde game falls into the winnable range. So they'd go into that not thinking, okay, well, we're not going to beat these guys or we can't beat these guys. That's a game that still is still there. If they don't win those two, then Clyde will give them an opportunity to snag a playoff spot in the last game of the year. So I really look at it as just if those last three games, they can win two of those three, they're in. They're all right. If they sweep them, they're
Yeah.
looking at maybe a three seed.
Yeah,
It's
and
possible.
one big advantage, you get both Breckenridge and Clyde at home. Of course,
Yes.
that comes at a cost. You have to start the district season with both Jim Net and Sweetwater on the road, which will obviously be huge challenges there. But if you can stay healthy through those, yeah, those last three games are going to be really interesting.
They don't have a ton of depth. They're young, they're inexperienced, a bit thin up front, especially. So a big factor, and we end up saying this a lot about schools, especially below the 4A level. Health is going to be important. They need to get out of that non-district portion, with a lot of their bodies intact and be ready. And
Mhm.
you can actually, I mean, you can include the Jim Ned Sweetwater games too.
Yeah.
If they get past them and still get into those final three games at a reasonable level of health, that'll be a key.
Yeah, for sure. But it's going to be interesting this year. This is the type of year that you kind of learn kind of where your program is. These are the types of years where you learn how established that culture that you've built is. So it's going to be a fun year for Comanche, in my opinion.
And with that, it's about time to wrap up this edition of the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, the Comanche Indians. But before we do that, we want to remind you that on August 20th, that's the big day here at Big Country Preps. That's the day we release our annual preseason preview, the most comprehensive look at Big Country football and the surrounding area around the Big Country of any media source that you're going to find, either in this area or across the state.
In the meantime, thank you for joining us for this episode of our Countdown to Two-A-Days series. And make sure you come back tomorrow when we take a look at the Jim Net Indians here at BigCountryPreps.com.